Peace and blessings, family. I'm Minister Dev, and welcome to this special episode of the War Room. Today, we're diving deep into a subject that's central to our faith and practice as believers: tithing. It's a practice that, when understood in its full biblical context, reveals the depths of God's wisdom for our lives and communities. I want to give a special shout out to my cousin DeMarcus for inspiring this topic with his awesome post on using his tithe to bless his community. You should check it out. A tithe, by definition, is a tenth, or 10%, and the practice of tithing differed from culture to culture in biblical times. It involved everything from property, like cattle and sheep, to the spoils of battle, like where Abraham gave his tithe from. Even produce from the land, like grain, new wine, olive oil, fruit, even currency at times. The principle was clear. The Israelites were expected to tithe all the wealth of the land that Yahweh had blessed them with. This acknowledged that everything they had came from God. The foundation for this practice is laid out right from Genesis, where we see God as the creator of all wealth. Despite the curse that he laid up on the land after the fall, God's blessing continued post-flood, providing the land of Canaan to the Israelites with an expectation of tithing in return. This tithe was given to the priests. It was a symbol of giving back to God what's rightfully his. The stories of Abraham and Jacob further illuminate this concept. Abraham tithed from the spoils of battle in gratitude to God for having his enemies fall before him, or having his enemies handed over to him, I should say. And Jacob, on the other hand, he vowed to tithe all that God gave him, recognizing God's provision and protection. These acts of tithing were not merely transactions, but expressions of faith and gratitude. Heart posture. Tithing also supported God's house. That's the physical representation of his presence among his people. This concept extends to our support of the church today, affirming the importance of contributing to the place where we worship and serve God. However, tithing wasn't just about supporting the church or the Levitical priesthood. It was deeply rooted in justice, righteousness, and love for God and our neighbor. Heart posture. The Israelites were encouraged to use their tithe to rejoice with their families and to support the less fortunate, embodying the command to love God and our neighbor. Heart posture. This brings us to the New Testament perspective, where the emphasis shifts from the legalistic practice of tithing to the heart behind the giving. Jesus criticized the Pharisees for their rigid approach to tithing, neglecting the weightier matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Paul echoed this sentiment when he urged believers to give cheerfully rather than out of obligation. So, what does this mean for us today? Well, while the New Testament doesn't explicitly mandate tithing, the principles underlying the practice remain highly relevant. Tithing is about recognizing God's provision, supporting the communal life of the church, rejoicing with our families, and caring for the needy. It's a practice that encompasses gratitude, worship, and compassion. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that tithing simply means giving 10% of our earnings to the church. But as we've explored, that's only one aspect of tithing. There are two other equally important ways to practice tithing, reflecting our love for God and for others. Whether it's through supporting the church, celebrating God's blessing with our families, or helping those in need, tithing is a multifaceted expression of our faith and commitment to God's kingdom. In conclusion, let us remember that tithing is not just about fulfilling a religious obligation. It's about living our faith in tangible ways, demonstrating our love for God and our neighbors. As we consider the biblical teachings on tithing, may we do so with a heart of gratitude and generosity, seeking to honor God in all that we do. Thank you for joining me today in the War Room as we reflect on the biblical principles of tithing. May we be inspired to practice this discipline, not just as an act of obedience, but as a joyful response to the abundant blessings God has poured into our lives. Be blessed.